I'm Sigourney Cantelo and welcome to Beautiful Inside. I've been a beauty and health journalist reporting on how to be beautiful on the outside for 22 years. Now I want to explore inner beauty as well. I've been influenced to make this shift by my own mental health journey, and it's prompted me to look for people like me who are willing to share their story. How do they care for their inner self while also attending to the outer? What have they learned about finding strength and courage and happiness in today's ever more challenging world? And what are the strategies that they've found to maintain that radiance, that joie de vivre, the inner spark that comes about when our minds and bodies are in balance? Come with me as we go inside the homes, routines, and inner lives of fascinating people. We'll discuss the science and psychology of beauty and self-care and give you the tools to look and feel the very best you ever have, inside and out. Beautiful Inside acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land that this podcast is recorded on, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. This episode is proudly brought to you by Internals, the new premium supplement brand powered by Synergy Skin. When it came to finding a sponsor for my first season, Synergy Skin was the first brand I actually approached. Not only do I love using their skincare, but I adore the brand founder, Terry Vincent-Jones. We've been friends for years and I've co-hosted many of their events, including their latest debut, Internals. Terry, who is a cosmetic chemist and an author, she wrote the incredible book Skinformation, is just a wealth of knowledge, and she's my oracle when it comes to all things longevity and inner health. In fact, every time I see her, I whip out my notebook and take notes on everything she's taking, from supplements, her diet, and her exercise. She looks absolutely incredible, but she also is a shining example of how inner beauty radiates from someone. She has this beautiful warmth, energy, vitality that just comes through in everything she creates. Both the skincare and the supplements are made in Australia, and they only contain potent ingredients that are proven to work. They're the perfect blend of science and nature. It's no surprise then that Terry's latest creation, Internals, is equally impressive from an efficacy and ingredient standpoint. But what I love most about them is that they're designed to boost your beauty and health from the inside out, which is exactly what we're all about here at Beautiful Inside. Welcome to Beautiful Inside. I'm your host, Sigourney Cantelo. Today, I'm thrilled to share my interview with a truly remarkable woman, Trinny Woodall. Now, Trinny is the perfect guest for Beautiful Inside because her whole life has been dedicated to the literal pursuit of beauty. First as a makeover maven on the Naughties show, What Not to Wear, and then more recently as a cosmetics entrepreneur of her own brand, Trinny London. Believe it or not, Trinny has now turned 60. On social media, she's a force of nature. She's always trying on a new outfit or a new workout while breathlessly extolling the livening effects of her latest serum or blush. She's the ultimate walking advertisement for her brand, but she manages to be so in the most authentic and relatable way. And her community loves her for it. The Trinny tribe are loyal to a T. And it's clear now that her mission is to be a voice for women 40 and above who often feel ignored by mainstream media. In addition to juggling the demands of her staggeringly successful business, Forbes valued Trinny London at $250 million in 2021. Trinny has recently penned a book, Fearless, and launched a podcast by the same name that are both devoted to her philosophy of living life fearlessly. But she hasn't always been so self-assured. In her 20s, feeling like an outsider and insecure, she turned to drugs. She ended up going to rehab twice for cocaine addiction, and after years of daily NA meetings, she has been sober ever since. Trinny shares so many great stories in today's episode, and with Trinny there are no filters, and that's what we love about her. And her ability to show up and commit so fully and absolutely with every inch of her being. She's a whirling dervish of energy, yet she is grounded in wisdom that can only come from living a life with her eyes wide open. I hope you enjoy it. Trinny, so lovely to see you again a year later.
A year, it doesn't feel like a year.
No, it doesn't.
It has been a year,
It's been a big year for you.
We've done a lot this year.
You have.
Great.
And you're here to celebrate the launch of microneedling.
Yes.
And your new podcast and your book.
Yes.
Fantastic. I love the podcast, and I've started reading the book, and it's such a wonderful guide. Oh, here we are. We have a copy here.
Yeah, we have a copy here.
Let's have a look.
Copy here. There we are.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful guide to everything. You've covered style, beauty, and life.
Yes.
And that's so fabulous. And I think, what I love about it is that you really, your mission seems to be obviously confidence on the outside, but also beauty on the inside, which is a topic that's very close to me as well. We've got Beauticate, my website turns 10 next year, and we're launching this podcast, Beautiful Inside.
Yeah.
And it's all about the psychology of why we beautify. So I'm really looking forward to sort of going back a little bit in time with you and looking at sort of your story and how your mastery of style and beauty has evolved. So you haven't spoken that much about your childhood. you were the youngest of three, and you had three half siblings. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You know, you went to boarding school quite young. What was that like?
That was, in the day, the norm, you know, in
Yes.
terms of the family I grew up with, and my parents traveled a lot. So they felt maybe it was better that we were at boarding school. I didn't love it. And I have a sister, she's 4 years older than me, and she was there. And I always felt slightly in her footsteps. She was very naughty, and she was sort of hated by the teachers and loved by the students. So I always felt that there was a reputation to, you know, like, the teachers would feel that I would always be like my sister. They would say, Susan, like this, you know, call me by her name. And all of the kids thought I would be as funny and as brilliant as my sister was. So I just felt it was challenging those years. But the one thing I enjoyed is I lived abroad, so I always had different things from my English friends. So I had, when it came out, different makeup and different clothes. And so I would do makeovers. So I would maybe not go home every weekend, but I would do makeovers at the school. And I loved making girls over. It was one of my favorite things. And it was the first time I got that sort of sense of it's like a drug when you can change how somebody feels about themselves. It's a very exciting thing to do. And it started there.
What did that look like for schoolgirls? Were you, was it just makeup, or were you doing things like plucking eyebrows and things?
No, I was piercing girls' ears I used car freeze. What's it called? That thing that you defrost, you go shh, and it, whatever. And then I'd just get a safety pin, which I'd sterilized. So there were some people who, you know, a few years later would say, Trinny, you know, there's one earring here and one earring there. And I thought, that's me. So I did do things like that, and never scared of trying something new. So there was a bit more than beauty.
Tell us about the cutting off the plait incident.
That was very much younger than that. That was even before I went to boarding school, but that was just literally a sort of disagreement with a girl who liked a boy that I liked, not in any sexual way, because I was five or something.
Yeah.
But she had these plaits, and I just didn't think, and it was a needlework, and I just chopped off. I think I chopped off one of her plaits, actually, so obviously she had to have short hair. And then I went home, and my dad was there with a guy called Frank Lauder, and he co-wrote the St. Trinians books. And he said, you're just like these girls. And from that moment, I was called Trinny, and because I'm Chris and Sarah Jane.
Yes, that's right. That's such a great story. So you were already changing people's look that young.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't with that intention, I'm sure. But
no, not with that intention at all.
And then the entrepreneurial spirit started early as well.
Yeah.
You had a business in bows.
I had my first business. I'm trying to think, because I remember something the other day when I was doing some talk with somebody. I definitely had, oh yes, I know. Before I had Bows Unlimited, or at the same time, or no, let me think, what year? I think all in the same period of 2 years. I had a shirt ironing company. What? And we used to take shirts from our friends. Maybe I was 18 at that stage. And Bows Unlimited maybe was when I was 17. So Bows Unlimited was the whole fad then of Princess Diana, and she had these big hair bows. So I go to Portobello Market, get these little jewels. Then I had this fabric I'd buy in Berwick Street. And then I had these lovely ladies in Brixton who were sewers, and they would sew these bows, and then we'd attach them. We'd sell them. We sold them like in Harvey Nichols. There was this store in Dover Street called Scott Crowland, which was this sort of cultish store. And then I even came to New York, and I walked down the streets with my mum trying to sell them. But then my friend went to art school, so that ended. But then I did do this other shirt pressing business. And I remember I went through so many bottles of starch, because it was really challenging when you put them on the dryer, you shrunk them a bit already, and then they were too dry to press. So if you use starch, it makes everything so easy to iron, but they were like stiff black tie shirts, you know, like this. And also I had all the wrong, we used to deliver back the wrong shirts to them, but luckily all these boys knew each other. So they say, do you have my Thomas Pink? Do you have my Harvey and Hudson? So those were all things that started with a great passion, but never completed. And there's a huge difference, I think, when you are on the journey of an entrepreneur, of when is that thing that you start to do where you know this is it, as opposed to this is just something I'm going to try and then I'll get bored of. There's a big difference.
I see. Well, you've obviously discovered that later in life when you found your passion for making over. Now, what were your earliest memories around beauty and grooming?
Very easy, because I remember this well, because I had very bad acne when I was 13. So I remember picking my spots at boarding school. I remember using witch hazel. My mum said Pond's cream or witch hazel. That was like go to Boots or go to M&S. no, but they didn't have Pond's cream. I think it was something like that, but it was nothing in it. And then a girl who lived in America brought Noxema, which is a shaving pomade from America, but it's slightly medicated. And it was like, I used it as a medicated wash. I thought it's got this kind of medicated bit. And I remember Noxema, it came in this blue tube with green writing, still made today. But it didn't really do anything. And then I went to stay with my godmother in New York, and all my pocket money I spent on Clinique because I went to this department store, which is no longer there, called
What
Lord
age
and
would
Taylor.
this have been?
15.
15.
And I saw Clinique first, the 3-step, and it had this thing you moved, and it seemed so amazing compared to anything that I'd seen in England. The fact that it sort of said it sort of diagnosed you at the beauty counter, and that concept was brilliant. So I bought that soap in the green thing and the paint stripper toner number 4 and dramatically different moisturizer lotion, way too rich for my skin. But it was the idea of a routine. And then from that time, I saved money or earned money, and what I spent it on before anything else was skincare. And I tried literally every single brand for 30 years before I started Trinny London.
Right. I was going to ask you when this sort of passion and dedication to self-care began. So it was that early at 15?
I think it begins with acne. When you are an acne sufferer, you are so much more concerned. Whereas Susanna, who was my partner in work when I did TV, had always had incredible skin. So she would go to bed with her makeup on, everything, wake up next morning and, having breakfast with her. And I'd done my 20-minute routine and she was like, looked amazing. But then at 50, she woke up and she called me one day and she went, what the fuck happened to my skin? Because when you have had your skin look after you for years, at some stage, you have to begin to look after your skin. And for some people, that's a later journey than others because they've never had a skin issue. So somebody who might have had acne or rosacea or dermatitis or something has made them focus on their skin before. But if you've always got away with good skin, then what will happen is suddenly that skin will have 2% less collagen a year, and then you'll feel this change and you'll think, oh my goodness. And people then literally say, give me my whole routine. What do I do?
Absolutely. Now, as a teen, obviously, the acne, what other ways did you sort of deal with it? You had the skincare, but did you hide it in any way? Did you have any other?
I wore a lot of fake tan. I did sunbeds.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I would go whenever I had a date. Like there was this very nice restaurant in London called Poulet Pot. And why I loved it so much, it was French food, is the lighting was a candle. There were no other lights because downlighters when you have acne are your enemy. And, if I went to a restaurant and I was sort of like this, and we have front facing if you're watching this on YouTube, we have front facing light. But if you have a downlighter, which is why even today, whenever there's downlighters in a room, I'm inclined to turn them off. It's my memory of just showing the crevices on my face, craters on my skin. So it does have an effect. It has an effect on what you wear, what colours, on whether you wear blusher or not, because you think I have spots, so do I want to wear blusher? So I always wore bronzer and not blusher, whereas blusher would have been far better for my skin. So I think those are a lot of things that I remembered when I was then developing Trinny London and thinking, first of all, how can we do skincare that really helps people's skin, whatever it might be, their skin condition? And how can we educate people who have had great skin and then suddenly they wake up thinking, I don't know anything about ingredients or skincare properly because it's been fine. And I now need to learn. So how can we do good education?
You do that, and your personalisation is fantastic. And going back to what you were saying about Clinique, where that was kind of the early personalisation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The first time anyone had ever thought to do that. And, 20s, you had, challenges, and you've said you were painfully shy. How did your beauty routine and the way you dressed project that? Did you project that, or did you hide it and dress?
I hid it, but I didn't feel I was hiding it. I only know that I hid it when people refer to how they saw me then. And I sort of think, are you talking about a totally different person? Because how I felt inside was very insecure and painfully aware of my skin and not feeling great about myself. Maybe I compensated. I always used to wear a lot of my dad's clothes. And so I do have this friend of mine, and she always says, when she introduces me, and I'm always thinking, who was she meeting? Because I met Trinny, I met her in Annabelle's, and she was wearing these blue and white pajamas from Tom Lasso from her dad that she'd half tucked in with his overcoat, and she was so fucking cool. And I'm just thinking, I don't even remember being like that, but I think I made up for it in dressing in slightly different things. And you know, I was on quite a small budget, so obviously I borrowed clothes from my dad, or I went to a shop called Miss Selfridge and I changed the buttons on things. And I always was with the scissors early. You know, I love cutting things, so that came early because it was something I could focus on, that I could get my head around, whereas my skin would sometimes be challenging.
Okay. And did you cut and sew things? Like, were you taking?
I think sewing a little bit. I did sewing at school, so I know how to sew. I know how to do back stitches and overlocking. I know how to use a sewing machine. But I wanted the quick fix, you know, to make a hem shorter, as long as it wasn't tremendously fraying fabric. A pair of pinking shears would do it for me.
And you were on the commodities floor at that time.
Yeah.
You were trading. So was that masculine dressing something that you did as a way to kind of fit in, do you think?
I think for sure. I mean, now when you say that, and I'm thinking, why did I borrow so many of my dad's clothes? They were slightly at the same time, although the dad's clothes came earlier. But my character was slightly different when I was in the situation, because it was a very laddish environment. It was selling Anglo-American funds, and it was, you know, telling dirty jokes, you know, the whole mentality. And it was literally me, 3 secretaries, and 64 men. And I made my voice very low, so I had clients, and a lot of people still, you know, when I've ordered an Uber or a cab, they'll turn up and I'll go, hi, and they go, no, I'm waiting for somebody else, and I'll go, is it Trinny? And they go, yeah, and they go, but I just spoke to you, but you're a man. No, I got a low voice. So it was convenient when I traded commodities, because there were a lot of clients who were very masculine clients, and they wouldn't have wanted to speak to a female salesperson. So I remember I had this client in Nigeria, and he was, you know, you spent forever trying to, you know, explain, and the market's going up today. And commodities is the arse end of trading, by the way. I got to tell you, it's not like you're, you know, doing like hedge funding of today. And so I remember I was thinking, finally, I might get him as a client. And he said, I'm coming over to England, and it's good to meet you. I was thinking, fuck, this is really not going to work. And opposite me was this guy called Philip. And it was the time that whenever you were in the financial markets, you would have everything recorded. So I said, Philip, you need to be me when he comes, because he won't accept to do this deal with. And it was for, you know, for me, it was going to give me a really good commission. I was like, I'll split the commission with you. So women are always giving things away. I spent months warming this person up. So, and he told me tons of his life. When we come out, we'll go to a club and meet some girls. It was like really difficult scenarios. So he came, and I said, so first of all, I got Philip to listen to the calls back that we'd had, so he could kind of understand the camaraderie I had with this person. Wow. And then when he came, I said, look, I'm really nervous. You might not remember stuff, so I'll be the secretary. So I came and brought them coffee.
This is like a film.
Isn't it just ludicrous?
Just unbelievable.
And you know, Philip didn't remember some of the things, so I was saying, oh, Mr. I can't remember Philip's last name. I better not say it anyway, in case it ever hear. But you know, oh, I think that was the email from. Well, no, it wasn't emails then, but I think that was a conversation you had, whatever, when you discussed X, and you went, oh yes, of course.
Such a brainwave of you to do that. You got yourself out of a tight spot.
He invested.
Did he?
Yeah,
and you got your commission.
Invest. Yeah, I did.
What did you spend it on?
I think
Probably.
I bought my first nice handbag, actually.
Yeah. Do you remember what that was?
I don't remember. I mean, usually I really mark these moments with things. If I think back, I'm trying to think what the fuck, because it was the first good handbag. I mean, I got to tell you, it was something like a Russell and Bromley handbag.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, because they would always say, do you want the matching bag with the shoes?
Oh, God.
They literally did that. And I think it was a Russell and Bromley handbag. It doesn't sound very
brown
glamorous
leather
today.
Or something?
Because it wasn't then about labels.
Yeah, right.
You know?
It was the pre
bag.
Yeah,
we can't imagine life pre-labels, but there was a life where, you know, Karl Lagerfeld hadn't taken over Chanel. He didn't take it over till like 82 or something. And this was maybe 80. this was maybe 82, 83. But like that whole
Yeah.
thing wasn't there yet. Yeah.
It was just that polished dressing, that kind of classic.
Yeah. 80s power
80s
shoulders.
power shoulders. I
Yeah.
love it. And now you're 30s. Now you obviously had great success with What Not to Wear and the spin-offs. And this was also riddled with a time of great pain, I'm sure, with the miscarriages and the IVF, rounds of IVF. How did you keep going through that incredibly tough time? How did you keep going with work when you must have been facing such challenges?
I think to some extent you go on autopilot, because I had a very nice sterility lady who looks after me called Dr. Wren. And whenever you have a miscarriage, you feel a tremendous guilt. Should I have done stuff? And I was working and quite, it was quite a strenuous, TV schedule. And she just always said to me, the embryo is like you're a feather in a balloon. So never feel that because of what you did, you miscarried. Because that's the first thing you feel as a woman when you miscarry. And I had a few miscarriages, and some were a little bit quite late. So the third one I had, you go and see a specialist, and he was, and then you do all these tests. So then I found out why, which just kind of helps you when you know why. It really helps. So some people, it can be the different chromosomes and they don't match, and then you do IVF and that sorts itself. You can sort that out sometimes. But I had a very thin womb lining, so the embryo couldn't attach. So then when I was doing IVF, and I did this round of IVF, and then I took every day this steroid injection, which I hated. I remember I hated taking because it was, it stung a lot when you did it. But I kind of thought,
you had to do it yourself?
Yeah, I did it myself. But by this stage, I'd done 9 IVFs. I was going all left, going all left, like that. You just get very used to. I remember the first time I did IVF, and Johnny would like, "Are you ready?" And my husband had been a medic before, and so he sat me down and we did it, and it was like this whole ritual. And like round 9, I was like,
a pin cushion,
a pin bloody cushion. So no, the injection didn't matter. But after doing it for 2 months, I sort of just thought, I don't know what's going in this, and I just feel it's going to be or it's not going to be. So I stopped doing it. But I was already 3 months over. But I had lost some. I'd lost one before at 17, 18 weeks. So I was very, after that period, I think I just said, look, I'm just going to stop this and hope it's going to be okay.
And it did.
It did. And it was. And now there she is.
How wonderful. Yeah. You got your bubba.
Yeah, I got my bubba.
That's amazing. What was the most challenging time from a confidence perspective that you can remember? And how did you pull yourself out of that?
Probably in my teens and my 20s, more than any other decade, I think. And I always wonder when I look at Lyla, why she has self-esteem, Lyla. Sometimes I think there's a big difference too between sort of self-belief and self-worth. So self-belief is totally generated by you, but self-worth can be triggered badly by other people. So you can lose your self-worth. I think it's like the difference between guilt and shame. Right. Shame is inward. What we do to ourselves. Guilt is what somebody else makes us feel. So I think there's a similarity. So I did put myself down a bit, but I also allowed, a few people in my life earlier on who weren't the best people to have in one's life influence how I felt about myself. And
in your teens?
More like when I was 20, 22, I had a relationship where I did have that person really just, when you live your life through how somebody feels about you, and we all have had at some stage a relationship like that, and that can kind of dent your self-worth a bit.
Absolutely.
And then just having acne, that was me to myself of just feeling, waking up. It's like you do all these potions and lotions at night, and you wake up the next day and those 8 spots are still there. And you sort of want to wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, they went. Yeah. It's just that feeling, and they haven't. And it seems a superficial thing, but you're just conscious. And I had the kind of spots that people would talk to my spot and not my eye. So I was very aware that they were there.
It wasn't
just in my mind. And you literally are watching to see where their eyes go. Yeah. Yeah.
At what age did it clear up, and how?
It cleared up. I did every single routine and wasn't using the right products. Then I did tetracycline, then I did minicin, which is another one you could do. I did Dianet, the pill, and then I did Aractane, and I did it for 3 months.
What was it called?
Aractane.
Roaccutane. Yeah.
Which I did for 3 months on the National Health, and they only gave you 30 milligrams a day, and then it came back. And then I paid for it myself. And I remember even then, it was half my salary. Wow. I earned £1,200 a month, and it was £600 a month.
God.
And I lived at home, but I remember I would have paid all my salary and just like, you know, I mean, if I hadn't lived at home, I couldn't have done it. And I did it for a year, and I did 60 grams a day, or 60, whatever, micrograms a day. And it cleared up.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you advise people now, if they've got serious acne, to use Roaccutane?
No, I don't think everyone needs to. And I think it's a quick fix for some people. I think some people whose skin is not that bad go straight to it. So I think there's other things one can try. Topicals first. One can try diet, topicals, and how you look after yourself. So how you wash your hair, the pillow you sleep on, what you eat. It's really good to get hormones checked, even if you're in your 20s, because you could have polycystic ovaries or something else that contributes, and it's more a hormone condition. So I think it's not always a solution. And I think people can jump to it quite quickly. And it does have an effect, I think, more on boys and girls, that there are elements of triggering depression. So I think it's something to really be aware of. It's not something to just say, let's just do it because it's a TikTok fucking trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it possibly could have triggered any emotional changes for you?
I don't think so, because you balance out the difference between actually how debilitating and emotionally low you feel around the acne versus how much better you feel that your skin's getting better. So I didn't feel there was that effect.
How has your perception of beauty and self-image evolved over the years? And can you remember any significant turning points?
I think when you realize you don't have to wear such a heavy base. So I would always wear a very heavy base to cover up bad skin. And then my skin got better, and I still wore that heavy base. And then I woke up one morning and I thought, I don't need to wear literally a centimetre of base. And I see a lot of other women where I think, I bet you at one stage had a skin condition you wanted to cover, but if we took all that off, we'd find great skin. Yeah. So I think we can get into a habit of something when it's the thing that saved us, and just hold on to it a bit longer than we need to. Yeah. Yeah. So
like a security blanket.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I do think for me, that was definitely one of them.
Speaking of security blankets, hair. You wore your hair, you said in your 20s that you felt that you hid behind your hair a little bit. How has your hair changed over the years, and how has it sort of changed reflecting your psychology?
It used to be very long, and I always felt, and I meet so many women like this, where they feel a body dysmorphia, or they feel they have bad skin, but they have their hair, you know, and it's like, I have my hair. And sometimes you want to say, you have so much more than just your hair, you know, but and they'll really look after their hair. And you can tell that they don't like so much other bits. So I think hair is very important. When I lost quite a lot of my hair during COVID, and I always felt I had thick hair, but it's frizzy, and I always blow dry it a bit. And, you know, the biggest challenge when I go around the world is finding somebody who can give me a blow dry where it works.
Because I get a bit this morning.
Yeah, Chris was there. If I had Chris like do this, do the half fringe, do the half fringe. And he was like, we're talking about Chris Appleton. He was like, do the kind of, what is it, half bloody curtain thing.
Yeah, the curtains.
Yeah, the curtains. And so I think when I lost a third of my hair.
A third of your hair?
Yeah, I lost a third of my hair. And it happens when people, obviously with chemo, you lose, generally most women end up shaving their head, and then it grows back, and it can grow back curly or straight or different from before, or different color. If you have a illness where you have a high temperature, it can happen, but there's 3 phases of hair. There's hair growth, hair resting, and then hair shedding. And when you go through any of those things, you don't have the resting phase, or you don't have the growth phase. So I think you have rest, shed, so your hair gets in it, exactly. So
it's so upsetting when you see those
and then you do that, and you know, I would have like 20 hairs come out each time, and then you do that more and more each day, because you're like, oh my God, I think I'm God now. So I then, like everything, became very obsessed, and I went and researched it, and I went to, sometimes the best hair are not trichologists, they can be dermatologists, because it's really all about the scalp, and it's about what you're feeding the scalp. So I have a menopausal doctor in New York called Erica Schwartz, and she gave me a prescription application to put on it, and I microneedle with it. And that's helped. And also time.
So that's a hormonal application? Or
No, it is. She's a hormonal doctor, but has in it, there's
steroids
No, not steroids. There is Regain for men, and then for women, it's not called matrixylin, it's called Medoxil.
Okay.
And it's an application of Medoxil with some peptides, which are in all my skincare, because I love peptides, growth peptides. And then I use a stamp. So we have a microneedle, which is a rolling microneedle,
Yes.
but it's a stamp. So I did that. And then when it ran out,
Fascinating.
I used our microneedle with Plump Up, because I thought that's peptides, and that's, because I always use everything in the way that we shouldn't advise anyone to use, because Dido in the corner now is going, don't say that. But I the idea really is, how do we get ingredients a bit deeper in the skin, which is what a microneedle is about. And, how do you stimulate your skin, which is also what a microneedle is about. So having the right education to know how to use it is very important, but then putting peptides on afterwards. And we did clinical trials with our microneedle and Plump Up together. And we saw this incredible change in the skin. And we saw over 2 months, an amazing change in the skin. So I think if that's doing that there, maybe it's going to help here. And I do feel that whenever I run out, I then use our peptide with a microneedle, a stamp.
So you
microneedle.
still do it for your scalp?
Yeah.
In a specific area?
Here, because it's all, for me now, hair loss when you are postmenopausal generally will be around your scalp. If it's another kind of hair loss, then it might be all over your hair.
So alopecia is a different thing again.
Yeah.
Have you ever faced criticism or judgment regarding your looks or your choices? And how do you handle those?
Always, because everyone has a right to say, I love it or I don't love it. And that's what the joy is of social media. Because beforehand, I think people might find to come up to you in the street and say, I really don't like that jacket, is really fucking rude, And I don't think we'd do it to anyone. But on social, you can say, I don't like that on you, Trinny. And I think that of all the Trinny tribe who engage with me on social, it's like we feel we're good enough friends that we can say, I much prefer it when you do this rather than this. So I don't mind it at all. And
it's not mean criticism. It's constructive.
There's sometimes you'll always get somebody who are like, oh, that woman again. And then all my tribe will say, well, then don't follow her.
Exactly. They
so
will
it's
jump
like
to your defense.
I never say anything. I think when people do say things, something I learned quite quickly is their life must be shit to always want to put other people down. And if you are continuously going around social doing that, I kind of want to say, look inside and what's going on with you. Are you okay? Because it's not going to make you feel good.
Absolutely. You turn 60 in February next year. So you show no signs of slowing down. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you really want to stand for?
Ask me that when I'm 90, because it's a question you ask me way too fucking early.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got lot more to do.
Yeah, a lot more to do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Trinny. I love talking to you. I could talk to you all day.
Okay, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Beautiful Inside. If you enjoyed this, the best thing you can do is share it with a friend, leave a review or give us a rating.